First of all, it's a little bit ironic that Eugene Bareman is saying this when one of his top fighters, Izzy, is a pretty notorious entertainer, trash talker. He gets into it with people. By the way, I'm a big fan of Izzy, by the way. I totally like his personality and his style. But it's kind of ironic that he's saying this when one of his top guys.
But I have to talk because your guys talk too much. And you know what?
See, he says, I want to stay humble, but I have to talk because your guys talk too much. What he's saying is there's other people who are trash talking. He feels he's missing opportunities, so he feels he's forced to do this. All right, people, what is up? So I was recording a different video for that's probably going to be uploaded at a different time. And I was just browsing through, am I recording? 11, 12, 13, yep, recording, just want to double check. I was just browsing through MMAfighting.com like I like to every day, and MMA Junkie, of course, shout outs. And I saw this article by Izzy's head coach, Eugene Bareman, which is really, really interesting because I saw it and I was like, what is he really talking about? So I was looking, I was like, okay, who's the interview with? I saw it was Submissionradio, and then we have Submissionradio right here. So I was listening to some of it. By the way, shout outs to these guys. Gonna hit the like button. Really like their content. I really like their interviews as well. I do like watching their content. Anyways, this is about Eugene Bareman. He was talking about how he felt that Khabib and Islam and stuff are apparently, going Hollywood, I guess, and just trash talking and moving away from the quote unquote purity of the sport and a couple of other things. It was a little bit, I just found it weird because I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to. Or sorry, I do know what he's referring to, but I don't know how he's coming to the conclusion. That's what I should say. Because in my mind, Khabib is pretty much acting like he always has. And he's teaching Islam certain stuff and trying to adapt him to try to teach him how to, use your voice to try to gain a title shot earlier and just not staying quiet. So it's weird why Eugene Bareman is talking about this, but let's just listen to some of his comments, and then I just want to give some of my thoughts because I think Eugene is just not on the money here. I just want to say a couple of things here. First of all, it's a little bit ironic that Eugene Bareman is saying this when one of his top fighters, Izzy, is a pretty notorious entertainer, trash talker. He gets into it with people. By the way, I'm a big fan of Izzy, by the way. I totally like his personality and his style. But it's kind of ironic that he's saying this when one of his top guys is, quote unquote, someone who's, not exactly a humble guy, I guess you could say. And Izzy would tell you that too. He's not like a humble guy. Like, he doesn't just sit around and keep his mouth shut. He talks, right? Which I like. Again, I like that about Izzy. So it's kind of funny that's coming. Secondly, there's like this notion that Khabib's like turning different now, which I don't know exactly where it's coming from. Or, see, I keep saying that again. I do know where it's coming from. It's coming from his comments about Gaethje recently, of course, like this articles and this stuff he's been saying here in regards to he believes that Islam should get the title shot first. Here's why Gaethje shouldn't. And a lot of this is just recency bias and people talking about how they think that Khabib is not being humble anymore and he's being a trash talker and this and that. This is the problem with stuff like recency bias and people's memories being short term. Khabib has for a long time has transitioned a long time ago into a sort of more outspoken guy. When his English wasn't as good, before he was with AKA, and or before he was with AK for a long time, learning from people like DC, Kane, Luke, and seeing how the game works. Yeah, he was probably a more quiet guy back then. But dude, Khabib has been who he is for a long time now. This transition to this more outspoken Khabib. So it's weird, and I like Khabib. Is he my favorite fighter? No, but I like him a lot. I like watching him fight, and I still wish he was fighting. I hated the fact that he retired early. I wish he was still fighting. I want to watch Khabib, but he's not my favorite fighter, so I don't have like some bias here. It's just weird to hear this because let's go back and see this. Let's go back into memory lane and listen to this right here. Let's see. Again, I told you it wasn't that long ago that he's transitioned, November 12, 2016. He's been like this for some time now. And listen to what he says here.
Alhamdulillah, I wanna say something. I wanna stay humble, but I have to talk because your guys talk too much. And you know what?
See, he says, I want to stay humble, but I have to talk because your guys talk too much. What he's saying is there's other people who are trash talking. He feels he's missing opportunities, so he feels he's forced to do this. He says he wants to be humble, but that's the reality of the society we live in. The capitalist sort of, clickbait slash trendy society we live in these days. This is the way it is. Entertainment sells. Clickbait sells. Drama sells. And people might say that it's coming from the top down. I think it's from the bottom up, in the sense that the media companies are going to play this stuff because they know that people watch it. You might say, oh, people don't watch this stuff. We don't like this stuff. The numbers don't lie. If you go on any sort of sport or any sort of event in real life, when there's drama involved, when there's, chaos involved, when there's things that are crazy involved, the viewership is much higher, right? When news stories sell stuff that regarding panic and stuff, the viewership is higher. It's just the way it is, and we consume it. Khabib probably realized this at some point, maybe not to that technical of a level, but he realized, look, talking sells, drama sells, entertainment sells. I mean, look at other sports, for example. The NBA recently, where LeBron said that thing and had those fans kicked out. NBA is a pretty they do their thing. It's a very quote unquote pure sport. Same with hockey and these other things. Well, I shouldn't say hockey, I was fighting, but you know what I mean. I'm talking about, they're not like boxing and MMA, where it's like a totally different type of situation when it comes to the buildup of stuff. In the NBA, usually people just want to watch the final teams facing off against the final. However, even in something like that, you look at when he had those two fans kicked out, what happened? A lot of views, it had a lot of clicks, and people were talking about it. News companies were talking about it. I saw people posting all over Instagram, social media, Facebook, everywhere, because people are attracted to that type of stuff. They see it and they want to see what happened. They want to tell their friends about it. They want to discuss it. They want to talk about the ramifications behind it. So in any sport, that's what happens. But let's continue.
Interesting. I understand how crazy power UFC PR machine. Your guy, beginning of the year, he tapped like chicken. End of the year, he fight for the title. Crazy. Hey, guys, this is true. This is not trash talking.
So this is kind of where he started realizing it. And this is kind of where you could see he was a lot more outspoken after this. I feel like it was probably always natural part of his personality, because if you look at the way that he interacts with people like DC, especially, he's always joking around with them. He's always messing around. So for Eugene to come out and say this type of stuff, and look right here. Let me make sure this is zoomed in. Here we go. Khabib talks more about other fights than anybody. I'm disappointed to see that. Because for me, he was that guy, oh man, this guy's still a purist. That's not part of his DNA. But now you see him slagging off fighters. And then Makhachev does the same. That never used to be part of their culture in the sport. They had their own unique place in the sport. Now they're just like everybody else. Khabib talks as much as everybody else. First of all, he does not talk just as much as everybody else. There's people who talk way more than him. And by the way, again, this is coming from the comments about the Gaethje stuff. What Khabib is trying to do is help someone that he considers like a brother, who he's been trying to help for a long time, who his father said that, I want him to be the champion after. He's just trying to vouch for him to get a title shot. And I think that teammates have the absolute right, family members have the absolute right to try to push for their own people to get a title shot. Absolutely. I think, for example, in Justin Gaethje's case, let's say Kamaru wasn't champion. I think Justin should be allowed to say anything he wants and say Kamaru should be fighting for the title, for example. It makes sense. Your teammates, your friends, your brothers with people. It's just going to happen. Totally fine. I didn't really think that anything Khabib said was outlandish. I know that some people, but here's the other problem. Once you're kind of positioned as someone who's supposed to be a humble guy, and look, for the most part, Khabib is a pretty humble guy, but again, he does talk sometimes. But once you're positioned into like a corner and where you say like, hey, I'm a humble guy, and people perceive you as that, any sort of talk you do, it gets picked up like that. Like, I told you he wasn't that humble. I told you Khabib was always a trash talker. I told you this. Now, is Khabib perfect? He's done messed up stuff, jumping off the cage. I mean, actually, I don't even want to say that because there was a lot of complicated factors behind that. But sure, there's stuff that maybe he shouldn't have said and didn't done. But nobody's perfect. But the way Eugene talks about this, like Khabib talks just so much to everybody else. Again, Khabib is not my favorite fighter, but it's just not true. He used to respect all fighters a lot. I think he still does for the most part. I heard maybe their managers control their Twitter. Yeah, I mean, that's probably true. I mean, that's just Ali. But then they're still foolish letting their managers control Twitter. Yeah, I mean, maybe they shouldn't let Ali do that, but whatever. Now, when it comes to Makhachev, who is talking more recently as well, again, that makes sense. He knows, and Khabib's probably telling him, look, you can't just be in this day and age, in this sort of clickbaity, entertainment-driven, drama-driven society we live in. You can't only just win your fights. You have to just do a little bit more to try to get it a little bit ahead quicker, right? If Islam keeps on winning, eventually he will get the title shot. That's just undeniable. But to try to build a name for yourself so you can maybe sell a little bit more, maybe you can create a sort of fight or build up with a certain opponent that maybe makes the UFC want to push that fight quicker with you. Maybe you'll do stuff that'll try to get you faster title shot. That's all normal. It is all 100% normal. So again, for Eugene to come out and say that this is also this, I like the old, I like the way it used to be before they got all Hollywood. They had their own culture, it was theirs. They weren't trying to be American. They brought a real kind of pure edge, blah, blah, blah. This sort of romanticization with people who always talk about how they loved when martial arts were pure and there was no trash talk and this and that, I understand where it's coming from. I do. When, after the Holloway versus Rodriguez fight, when Max Holloway went to go meet Rodriguez outside in the ambulance, I love that. I love stuff like that. If you watch the fight and then watch that and didn't feel anything, I mean, maybe you're a sociopath or something, I don't know. But I love stuff like that, right? It's amazing. It's awesome. Like when Colby and Kamaru came afterwards and, had a little bit of talking. I know Colby is changing the tune again, but that's his shtick. But when they came together for a little bit, that's awesome, right? It's cool, right? It's nice to see. However, people who are like hardcore purists, who are just like, I wish there was no talking anymore. I wish there was no drama. Guys, I'm sorry. Like, we just don't live in that day and age anymore. And I think that human beings have always liked this sort of stuff because I don't think that we've evolved past not liking this stuff. I just think that now technology is exposing it more. Those, before the Hollywood days, and I like the purist and the bowing and this and that, those days are gone, guys. And honestly, do you really want those days to come 100% back? No. I like it where I like the kind of fine balance we have right now, where there's some drama, there's some build-up. Afterwards, most of the time the fighters shake their hand. Most of the time fighters are respectful. Then you have some who trash talk more, some who don't, some who are in between, some who say really bad stuff, some who don't say anything at all. And yes, sometimes there is cases where people who talk more and this and that do get pushed ahead because they can sell more. It's just the system we're living in. Those days of purity and this and that, those days are over. It just doesn't. So, I don't know. And again, I do recognize that Bareman says he still has respect for them. But again, those days are over. I just don't agree with some of the conclusions that Eugene came to. I don't think he's looking at it from the sense that Khabib made this transition years ago. Right? After that show on MSG, he made the transition at UFC 205. So anyways, those are just my thoughts. I still think that Khabib is a humble guy. I still think that Khabib is for the most part, but again, after years ago, he was more outspoken. He's been like this for a while. It's just that people keep on having this sort of thing where they think that he's purely humble, and anytime he talks, it means that he's not humble anymore. He made the transition quite a while back. So he's still pretty humble for the most part, but he's more outspoken now. And I don't know. That's just what my thoughts on the video are. So, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe for more content similar to this. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.